So to kind of recap, we're going to talk about how to get started and really engage in this presentation. Then we are going to talk about the branding and benefits, and then we'll talk about the other side of LinkedIn. So most people know LinkedIn as online resume or a place for you to build your profile, but there's an entire other side in an area that we're going to focus on today that can expose you to a lot of different opportunities that you may not have been aware of previously. Then we're going to talk about curating your timeline for learning. So that first piece of the webinar, we're talking about becoming a better mentor. And then we're going to learn how you can kind of repurpose your knowledge as it relates to content creation, as well as being recognized as a subject matter expert, which could really improve your job search chances, as well as if you are a freelancer and are looking to create additional income, this will be a great resource for you to utilize for that as well. We'll talk about LinkedIn posting suggestions, because I see a lot of people will post and then they'll get discouraged because they don't get any engagement, and there are a lot of reasons for that. We'll talk about that. And then we'll have an activity to kind of close out before we do some Q&A and answer some questions from you all. And then closing statements as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into today's content. So as far as the guide to participation goes, these are a couple of things that I want you all to consider. So if you could, I see that several of you have turned your microphones and your cameras on. Thank you so much for doing that. I would ask that you keep your microphones muted unless you're speaking. But I also want to be able to see you all so that we can engage better. It's also great for building community and for you all to network with each other. I know that you have access to speak to each other through Student Hub channel, but this is a great opportunity as well. One bullet point that I like to mention is that if you let me, I will talk for this entire time. And if you want that, then that's okay. But I do want to get some engagement from you all. I do want this to be an integrative experience. And then the last thing is something that I always want to make very clear with the Udacity students, as well as anybody who may not, have English as their first language. A lot of times I have to coach my students through the fact that, like, this is not a disadvantage for you, and this should not necessarily be an insecurity as well. This is an advantage that you can utilize in your job search. And so I also want you to feel comfortable sharing with this group. This is a safe space for you to ask questions, to where there isn't going to be any judgment. Nobody's going to critique your background or your microphone quality or your English speaking ability. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to help and build community through you all. So that's kind of what I want to focus on today in terms of our guide to participation. But yeah, let's jump in, and I want to hear again from you. So what I want to know is, what does personal branding mean to you? And if you feel comfortable, feel free to jump on your microphone as well. And if you don't, I may ask you to from the chat. So if you feel comfortable, feel free to unmute yourself and speak up. I don't have any concerns that too many people are going to jump on at once. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think personal branding, like in relations to this, would for me mean like kind of that people on the one hand learn to associate you with a certain kind of like product, or in that kind of in that this space right here, as if in the field, right? And I feel that when we're talking about personal branding, it goes a bit into the direction of diversification. Yeah, so yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to jump on their microphone and share?
Okay. Hi, Brett. Muhammad. I think personal branding is relative to show to the people what you can do, what your expertise on, so they know what you can do to help them in their projects. I think this is an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I see in the chat, Irina says, what people say about you when you leave the room. Absolutely. Or when you're not ever in the room to begin with. So obviously with the pandemic, we're not fully able to kind of jump in and, you know, share our own experiences with people in person. So what I was talking to a group about today is really your only presence is your online presence these days. It's really important that you develop this because people don't have the luxury of being able to necessarily meet you in person at a networking event or meet you at an information session or anything like that. So your online presence is extremely important these days. And so Pratik says someone types the name on Google and they find me, that's personal branding. So yeah, that is definitely an aspect of that. And I think by putting more of your work and your expertise out there, it allows you to be more likely to populate in those Google searches, even if you have more of a common name, which is a huge concern for some of us. My name is not extremely popular, but there is a famous author with a name very close to mine. So sometimes when you search for that, his stuff pops up, but I'm working very, very hard to take over his search results. Great point. Anybody else?
Yes, Brad. Like, I just want to say I can share my video, but anyway, I think sometimes this is a disadvantage for people because for me as an introvert, it's very hard for me to engage on social media networks and on LinkedIn and create posts. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess that's why I'm here because I want to learn some good practices.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that that concern. I do think that by focusing on like online branding, it allows people who are introverted to be a little bit more extroverted because you're not necessarily having to go into a room full of strangers or do public speaking in front of a room of people. It's a little bit of a different experience. So hopefully some of the things that I'll share with you today can ease some of those worries. And I think a lot of it just has to do with getting started. And then you realize, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be, or as I'm not as nervous as I thought I might be. Let's see, there are two U's, how you see yourself and how other people see you. So personal branding is related to how people see you. That's a great way of describing it. What you are known for. Yes, Larry says how you can convert yourself to a brand, something with value. Kartika says how you want to introduce yourself to the world. All of these are really great. So you guys have a really solid understanding of what this is. Oh, one more. Mark says, I would say personal branding has to do with your level of exposure on a community, what your works or solutions are known for. Absolutely. I think everybody kind of hit different areas of personal branding, but you all seem to get the gist of it. So I just pulled this this kind of quick definition, so nothing too fancy, but this says that a personal brand is a widely recognized and largely uniform perception or impression of an individual based on their experience, expertise, competencies, actions, and or achievements within a community, industry, or the marketplace at large. So yeah, a lot of you almost kind of took the definition, I think, and so this shows me that you all have a solid understanding of what this is defined. So now let's talk a little bit about the actual benefits of it. So the first one is one of my favorites. So getting job offers without applying. So this may seem a little bit idealistic, but in all reality, I was able to get this job with Udacity without ever applying because of my well-developed profile, because of the content I was putting out on LinkedIn. I was able to draw the attention of not only recruiters from Udacity, but other places for career coaching opportunities, and people still reach out to me for those. And so, you know, for a lot of you, you may be in a position where you are serving as a mentor or reviewer in kind of a placeholder to kind of get into the actual work that you want to do. And so this can be a really great strategy within your job search to start getting known for some of those opportunities. Another thing that I love about personal branding is that it can potentially expose you to earn additional sources of income for your expertise. So I would have never thought that I would be kind of doing multiple different things that are paying me in a sense to do the exact same thing. So within what the work that I've been able to do, I'm able to get paid for coaching through Udacity. I'm able to get paid for coaching through my business. I'm able to get paid to do writing and get paid to do kind of outside private webinars and events. The cool thing is all of the content for the most part is the same. So I'm able to recycle a lot of it and get paid multiple times from multiple different sources for providing, you know, some of the same content, but just presenting it in a way that's targeted for those specific audiences. So with Udacity, my content is focused on IT. Within the blog that I write for, that's kind of focused on kind of current working professionals. So it's less about job searching and more about how to thrive in your current role. So with the knowledge that you have, in addition to maybe being a web developer, you could also get paid to write for tech blogs and talk about the upcoming trends or things that people should look out for. You may also get some opportunities to teach classes for free or teach other developers how to get started. So there are plenty of opportunities that personal branding can expose you to. And obviously, I'm not anywhere near where I want to be, but just looking back on when I really got started in LinkedIn was only like 3 years ago. And I didn't have anybody like me to guide me through that process. I had to learn as I went. So you may be able to kind of fast track that process with some of this information, as well as if we potentially do some events in the future. Another thing which a lot of you also might be entertaining, and I'd love to hear, go ahead and drop in the chat if you're also doing freelancing or anything on the side to create some other income, because personal branding, not only, it works kind of similarly to how you're drawing attention from employers. You can also draw attention from potential customers, whether that is you having a business to consumer business or a business to business business, or that kind of model. There are multiple ways where you can start drawing attention to where you don't have to be that person always cold calling people. You're creating some passive lead generation from showcasing your expertise. So there's a benefit there as well. And then lastly, this one is a little bit less tangible, but being respected by industry leaders. Sometimes that allows you to be asked, hey, can you come serve on this panel? Hey, would you like to speak at this conference for developers? Would you like to, you know, help me host an event for machine learning? You know, these are things that can provide a lot of value in terms of networking as well. So it can expose you to people who you really look up to are actually reaching out to you and asking you for help. So obviously this is not a very quick process, but it can happen quickly depending on what spaces you're entering and how intentional you are about that process. So I don't know if I saw anything in the chat. Is anyone at all doing any kind of freelance work or has their own business or plans to start one anytime soon? Feel free to jump on the microphone as well if you'd like.
Yes, I'm working on a project right now, and hopefully I'll get users to use it and see how it goes.
Okay, very cool. So you can kind of tackle this from two angles. You can increase your job search prospects as well as draw customers for a freelance business. A lot of the information is the same to do both things. Yeah, anybody else? Okay, Larry says
Well,
Udacity is for freelance for him. Oh yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was part of a joint venture a while ago, and now while I intend to continue to build competencies in my IT consulting works, I also having a look if I want to start a business with partners right now, with two partners.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
So
So hopefully you'll gain some insight for that as well.
and for that, like, branding is very important, I think, like for yeah.
Yeah, especially if
Yeah.
you're starting out, right? You need to increase the awareness of what you're doing for people to even respect or seriously consider paying you for your work.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, it's like a physical product, so like a food startup basically, that we're looking at right now. So yeah, so that's definitely a big part, I think. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I see John says that he works in the live event space, so the shutdown, it's been tough. Man, I get it. I actually had like a full 5-part workshop series with Georgia State University, and that got completely canceled. Obviously, I took some time to pivot and figure out what's going on in the market and transition that to virtually. Obviously, that's not realistic with every single type of live event, but I definitely understand and can relate to that. Let's see, an iOS business, leadership coaching, Very cool. Okay, awesome. So let's keep moving. Wait, let's see one more. Khalid said, I have a startup in self-driving vehicles, low-speed vehicles, golf carts. Very cool. So yeah, hopefully you all gain some benefits for this outside of just job seeking. So now I want to do kind of a live demo and showcase to you how I navigate LinkedIn outside of just my profile. So give me 1 second, and I think I also need to share. Let me see. Oh yeah, I can share that same screen. Okay. So, so yeah, obviously this is kind of the home page. Everybody give me a thumbs up if you can see this okay. Okay, great. So yeah, this is basically your home page, what comes up when you log into LinkedIn. If you're not fully familiar, I'll do kind of some basics. So yeah, this is kind of showcasing who you are. You can go to your profile from there. But when I'm logging in, I usually log into LinkedIn every morning. I usually do it while I eat breakfast so that it's kind of part of my routine and part of a habit. And I will go through and I'll read the news here. So the reason why I think this is important is that, you know, it helps you to stay on top of the industry in general. So I oftentimes will get, you know, job search advice. A lot of it's a little bit dated to me, a little bit, you know, things that we should have been knowing a year or two ago. But some of it is new. Some of it talks about different startups and businesses. You see a lot of stuff on here about like Google and Amazon and who's hiring. But this is really great for me also for things like potentially investing in stocks. You can kind of see how certain businesses are doing, what's on the rise. I know there was a lot of conversation on here about WeWork and different businesses with models like that. And so outside of just your career, it kind of helps you stay up to date with business in general, which most places that people work are businesses. Even if they're nonprofit, they still operate as a business. So it's just helpful to know that information. Um, Outside of that, your timeline is something that you can curate. And that's one of the things that I mentioned before. You want the things that are showing up in your timeline to be relevant to things that you're interested, as well as your own personal career branding platform. So you want to be sure if you are a mentor for machine learning, you want your timeline to be related to machine learning, data science, artificial intelligence. And if you are for digital marketing, this is a great tool. And oftentimes I'm coaching students who are studying digital marketing in the fact that like they don't even know how LinkedIn is utilized. And that's a huge marketing tool. I think it's one of the top lead generation platforms for business to business. So it's a great platform to learn for digital marketing and really any area. So as I kind of scroll through my timeline, usually do this a couple of times a day, you will see posts from certain people. So when it comes up in your timeline, it's either someone who's a first connection, which is a someone that you're actually connected to, like they sent a request or you sent a request and it was accepted. You also may see things on your timeline that second connections post. So you'll only see posts from like first connections and second connections and sometimes ads. But this is really important to know as we start talking about creating content, because Justin posted whatever this is, and I would have never seen this content if it wasn't for Monique and David, who I am connected with, who actually engaged with this content. So that's why and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but when you create content, you want it to be engaging. You want people to like and comment it because then that exposes you to their network. Whereas a platform like Instagram, you have to kind of be following someone to see their content unless you go to the explore page. But this is kind of the main homepage, so it exposes your work to potentially a lot of people. So you don't want to just put out boring content to show that you're an expert. You want to make it engaging, and you want to try to almost build your own community. We have a couple of questions before we move forward. How can you build personal branding on LinkedIn? Posting stuff and your employer sees it, it kind of signals that you're looking for something else. So I think that that's a little bit more of an old school mentality. I think if you're putting on your profile that you're open to work or looking for work, I think that's different than you posting on your timeline, sharing best practices as a mentor or sharing best practices for software engineering. That doesn't indicate to me that someone is job searching. That indicates to me that someone is interested in building their personal brand. I'm going to share my own personal opinion. If my employer had an issue with that, I would not want to work for them. I understand obviously that, you know, we're not all in a situation where we can, you know, put our jobs at risk. That's not what I'm saying. I do think that that's very minimal for someone to try and critique, especially if you are job searching, that they should be supportive of that. But I understand not every situation is like that. Alessio says, how do you find the premium feature for your profile? So my honest opinion, I would not have it unless you have a business or are using it for entrepreneurial perspectives. As a job seeker, I don't think it's worth the money. It's like $60 a month. But you do get access to things like LinkedIn Premium. So for me, it's a business expense. I would never come out of pocket for that as a job seeker. But that's not to say that you wouldn't find value out of it. I just think that that's, you know, that's like 4 times more than a Netflix subscription, and I get much more value out of that. Let's see. Recruiters aren't replying despite sending a good message. What can I do about that? So let's hold off that question. I want to make sure that we stay on topic, but please bring up that question again later if I don't answer it throughout the presentation. So one thing that I like to mention about LinkedIn, especially as you're navigating kind of your timeline and as you are reading the news, to me, logging into LinkedIn every day is like going to a conference. You have people who are industry experts who are sharing their knowledge. It's an opportunity for you to learn, as well as like read the news and figure out what's trending in your industry. So for me, I get so much value out of this platform, even as a passive learner. So if you only take that from this session, I think it's still worth it to just use it to stay on top of your industry. And obviously, you want to make sure that you're following the right people and connected to the right people. So make sure that you are curating your timeline. If you're starting to like certain things, then those things are going to start to populate more. So with this person, Tristan Walker, he's a founder and CEO of Bevel, which was like a men's grooming product. And I've actually seen him speak live and I really enjoyed that. So whenever he posts things, even if I don't necessarily fully read it, I know that I like his content and I want more of that to show up on my screen. So different things as it relates to career coaching, job searching, education, technology, those are things that I'm passionate about and things that I've built a career around. So that's why those things are populating on my timeline. And if there are certain things that might be a little bit irrelevant, I would probably choose not to engage with that so that I don't see more of it. But one of the things that I would highly encourage that you all do is make sure that you're connecting with other people in your industry. So if you go to your My Network tab, you can start to see people and they'll give you recommendations, right? So they'll give you recommendations based on, you know, people who are doing similar work, people who may have gone to the same university as you, maybe other people who have completed nano degrees. I don't know if they've gotten that specific, but you can also search for that privately. But this is a really good area for you to look to start finding content experts and industry leaders. And then when you go to their profiles, start to see if they actually create content. So if you were to go to my profile, one of the things that you might want to check, and this is always slow when I screen share, but if you were to go to my profile and you were to scroll a little bit down, you could see that I have created some content on LinkedIn, but you can also see in my activity things that I've done recently. So if you find an industry expert and you go to their activity page and you don't see anything, chances are they're not very active. But you can also go to see all and you can see, okay, Brett commented on a post this morning and one yesterday. He's probably pretty active. This is somebody who's worth following. And then you can look at the content that they've posted in the past as a way to kind of see if this is a good person worth connecting with. So I wanted to share that just briefly in terms of how I personally navigate the homepage, because I do think that it's a really great opportunity for you to engage not only with people in your area of expertise, but I think it's also a point that I wanted to make for you all to engage with other people like yourself. People who are mentors, people who are, you know, software engineering instructors, people who may potentially do the same exact thing that you do, but maybe for a company like Flatiron School or General Assembly or Thinkful, all of these like coding boot camps that are upcoming, you can connect with other people who are in similar situations as you, because that can be a really great networking opportunity as well. So let me see. I know that there were a couple more comments and questions. Let's see. Oh yes, this is definitely being recorded, so it will be shared with you all as well as those who weren't able to attend after. Okay, so let's jump back into the presentation.
Hi, Brad.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Sure.
So my question is how to highlight our performance as independent contractors in Udacity as a mentor and as a reviewer in our resume and also in our LinkedIn profile. And
Yeah.
also, I don't know, how could Udacity give us stats of about our performance
Mm.
that displays our dedication and efforts toward better performance for students?
Yeah, that's a good question. I
Very.
personally won't be able to
Uh,
answer that. Go ahead, Alex.
no, I also wanted to say that's very good question. Because like all the time spent as a reviewer is maybe something that we would really benefit from, have kind of a proof of work, because everybody wants to see a proof of work at some point. So yeah, so that's why I just wanted to add that. That's a very good question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's definitely something. So that's not necessarily my area, but I think it's something that you can bring up with your leadership team. I know from the coaching side, there is some that we do to get feedback from students. But one thing I do want to make note of is, like, regardless of Udacity or wherever you work, that should always be a habit of yours to do on your own, and find ways for you to be able to document your experience. So obviously, as it relates to student feedback, you probably don't want to set up your own system, but just get in the mindset of how you can do that in general is really important, because those are things that I showcase on my LinkedIn, or things that I showcase on my resume, is kind of my coaching, satisfaction score in a sense. But in previous positions, that was never provided to me. And so in previous positions, I had to actually find ways to showcase my work outside of that. So I would just encourage you to kind of also brainstorm and reflect, like, outside of them tracking that, what are some other ways that I can document my experience? And you bring up a good point, because the main goal is for you to be able to showcase your impact. That's hugely important as it relates to a job search, but also for asking for raises, promotions, salary negotiation. Those things can really be beneficial. So yeah, I definitely I know that Bree's on here, so she's aware that that's something that you are looking for. So it's probably something that they'll want to explore. But outside of that, I would highly encourage that you look for things outside of that as well, so that you're tracking your own experience. But yeah, great question. And the cool thing about that is, like, as you're documenting that experience, you can use that outside of just your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Those are also things that you can use to create content around. One of the things that I encourage people to do as they create content is, it's okay to brag. It's okay to brag. One of the things that I would say is, the approach that I take is brag and teach. If I'm going to brag, I'm always going to add something of value to someone else. So if I'm going to say, look at me, I just finished this certificate program, I'm also going to add 5 tips for anyone else who's interested in learning about that topic. So that way, people, as they're scrolling through the timeline, you might get 5,000 likes for finishing a PhD program, but that doesn't mean you're going to get any follows. But if you are someone who kind of posts, look at this, I just completed this nano degree, here are the 5 things that I learned, or if you're interested in Udacity, here are my top 5 tips for making the most out of your experience. That's something that people would want to follow you for if you start posting similar content. Let's see. Is it a good idea to let an employer know that I'm working at Udacity along with my full-time job? Will they be comfortable with that? Is it going to affect my interview? So I think if you are, it's a tough question to answer. I don't think that I have the right answer. I don't think that I've navigated that well in the past. I know that a lot of employers want you to be solely focused on that job, and that's not something that I can coach you around. Like, you're dealing with people. People have their own set of biases. They have their own set of experiences and things that alter their judgment, and so it's hard to give you a right answer for that. I think the important thing is for you to focus on employers that are going to be supportive in whatever you do. I know that, if this is contract, if this is freelance, it could be beneficial to mention, but it could also be a negative thing to mention depending on who you're talking with. And then, yes, Magdi says some contracts prevent you from doing that. Definitely. I think it also, some companies have non-competes that you have to check very critically to see if it's in conflict with what they're doing. But yeah, all great questions. So yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about in terms of creating the actual content. So we touched on it very briefly about, okay, I want to create content. Where do I get started? So this is a very common question that I get from people who are kind of worried about getting started. You know, what do I say? I don't feel comfortable writing an article. Here's some things that I would encourage you to think about. So I'm sure you all can kind of attest to this, that when you're talking with students or you're reviewing questions or you're reviewing projects, they're the same issues that are coming up over and over and over. Is that accurate? Is that true? Is that something that you all experience, kind of seeing the same mistakes? Feel free to hop on your mic because I might have a follow-up question. Okay, so yes, sure. Let me see. Harisu, if you feel comfortable, or Alvaro, or anybody who said yes, jump on your mic. I want to know what's the most common issue that you get from students. All the time, yes. Who wants to share?
Hi, Brett. So, well, I don't remember exactly what,
Okay.
but yeah, I do know that there are some really frequent questions. So what I actually did was creating like a blog post on Medium,
Okay.
and like before there were like the knowledge was like a very powerful tool, and students did not use it that much. So I created that like frequent asked questions blog post, and yeah, like I get a lot of likes
Yeah,
for
and
that.
I think that's great too, because it saves you all time, right? So creating content has saved me a tremendous amount of time, and it's something that I didn't realize as a direct result. So one cool thing about it is, like, when I have coaching calls, usually my first call with students is focused on creating a plan, because most people have no plan for their job search. They're just applying, and hoping that something sticks. And that's not an effective strategy. So usually our first call is focused on that. And then our second call is usually focused on, it used to be focused on going through their LinkedIn profile. And what I found was that I was like a broken record, and I was getting really bored of walking people through the same basics. And so I created a LinkedIn webinar that is focused on putting together your LinkedIn profile. So after that first coaching call, I could say, I want you to watch this, so that in our second call, we can go through your profile together and we're not starting from scratch, because you'll need time to think and reflect and write, which is not conducive to a 30-minute phone call. So do that in the meantime, so that you have something to work on in that space on your own, which is more conducive for you to do on your own, so that we can be more productive. So sometimes creating that content is really helpful in saving you and students time when they're not able to have a direct one-on-one conversation. So yeah, I see. How do I get an internship with your company? How to start my app? So those are content ideas. Those are things that you can potentially write about that I think people would really find value in. And I think you definitely want to check with the leadership team to ask if it's okay for you to share your outside content. That's something that you want to make sure is clear first before you even do that. But another thing that you could do is just simply say, you know what, follow me on LinkedIn. I have some resources there that you might find valuable. Or say, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm usually posting about this topic, if you can't get around that. But I would say make sure you double check with that to see if that's okay first. So yeah, another question, what's the biggest mistake you see beginners make? Oftentimes with Udacity, we're dealing with beginners. We're dealing with people who are starting from scratch or transitioning careers entirely. And so those common mistakes to you might seem boring, having to address them over and over. And trust me, I can relate. Those are good. That's gold. That's content gold, because if you have 20 Udacity students who have that issue, imagine how many people in the world are having that issue that you could potentially help solve for them. And people remember that. There's an article that I wrote on LinkedIn about how to write a cover letter that's just taken off. It's not even my best one, but it has over 50,000 views. And there have been several people who have said, you know, thank you so much for sharing this, Brett. This article alone got me my job. I can guarantee you that when their friend says, I really feel like I'm struggling, I need help with my resume, or I need a career coach, they're going to think of who? They're going to think of Brett, the guy who helped them get a job, even if they didn't hire me as a coach. So it also helps you stay top of mind and be kind of known top of mind for your area of expertise and what you really want to be known for. And as Alvaro mentioned, he wrote that article on Medium. You could very easily copy and paste that article and put it on LinkedIn. I have most of my articles on both platforms, and I get, I get a lot of Google search results from Medium, but I get a lot of like follows from LinkedIn for the same type of articles. So I have the cover letter article does really well on Medium as well. But then I have one that I created that's like the ultimate guide to remote and work from home jobs that I created in 2018. And that one has skyrocketed since the pandemic started. So you never know when your content could potentially take off. So it's helpful to just create it because you can always repurpose it. The funny thing about that one specific article is that I created a post on LinkedIn and I said, hey, career coaches, I'm looking for advice. I see that people are more interested in this idea of working remotely and working from home. What's the deal with that, basically? And this was 2.5 years ago. So I got like 70 comments, people who were career coaches, tech recruiters who had been working remotely for 10 plus years. And what I did was I transitioned all of those comments into the guide. And I tagged each and every single one of those people. So guess what they're going to want to do? Hey, check out this article I was featured in. And then you have like 20 plus people who are sharing my article just because they're in it. And that boosts the awareness tremendously. And all I really did was kind of compile all of their comments and put it in an order that made sense. And I credited every single one of them. So there's a win-win-win for that. The contributors win, I win, and the viewers win. And I always try to operate in that mindset as it relates to, creating content. I think it's important to think about. And so just a couple of content channels that I want to share. LinkedIn, obviously, if you have a blog or you have Medium articles, very easy to transition that to LinkedIn. One thing that I usually remind people about is, a lot of people say, I started this blog, I have like 4 articles on it. Realistically, how many views are you getting on that blog unless you send someone a direct link, right? I don't think, there may be a couple of you in here who have very successful blogs, but I think for the most part, people who have blogs don't get as much views or engagement as they want, and that tends to cause them to quit. Whereas a platform like LinkedIn, you're getting a lot of passive traffic just from keyword searches. And so that can really boost the visibility there, even if you've already created it somewhere else, even if it's 2 years old. Write it in a way that's current for now and make it to where it makes sense for your audience. Let's see. Most beginners directly jump into advanced topic without knowing basic prerequisites. Gotcha. Yes, that's a good point. And I think that that's something that you could create content around and saying, if you're interested in getting into the field of data science, I highly recommend that you take this specific online course that you found elsewhere. Udemy.com, take this. And then if you're comfortable with that and feel confident, move on to this Udacity Nano degree that takes it a step further. And then beyond that, you'll need to gain experiences like this, and this for employers to take you seriously. So that's content gold. So you all have kind of these ideas that are just kind of in here, and you're using it when you're responding to questions, you're using it when you're grading projects, you're using it when you're talking to students, but it's not being repurposed to a place that I think benefits you even more. And so when it comes to creating content, a lot of it, you can get rid of a lot of that intimidation from saying, I'm not sitting down for an hour and writing something from scratch. I'm just repurposing what I've already used and what I've already done in multiple different ways. So to me, I'm trying to create as many different sources of income as I can doing the same thing. I think that that's ideal because it saves time. If I have, a full day of coaching, I could still do a webinar at the end of the day. I could still write an article. And a lot of that allows me to have multiple sources of income for basically the same knowledge. So I do think that there's ways that you all can incorporate that into your own current situation.
Brad, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Sure.
I think that was really good advice, how to, I don't know what content to write, especially for students. But what about if, maybe the audience is not a student and I don't know, it's like human resources directors or something, and they don't like ask questions on LinkedIn and those kind of things. So what would be, I don't know, like the strategy to know what to write if there are no questions?
Great. That's a great question. I think if you're going to create content on LinkedIn, the point is to educate people. So they don't necessarily have to be Udacity students. They don't necessarily have to be students in general. But I think if you posted something, I could learn from it. If I posted something, you can learn from it. And when you engage with that, I'm sorry, it just creates more awareness of what you're doing. So even if you're not creating content for HR managers or recruiters, those people still have potential to see that because people that they're connected to are constantly engaging with the stuff that you're writing. I would never target recruiters for content. I don't think that that's ideal because that really limits you to, you know, a job search. You don't want to make it about like hire me, hire me, hire me. It's like, I know what I'm doing. This is how I know what I'm doing. I have 30 people who have commented on here and 78 likes. People know that I can do this work. And so those they're just being exposed to your work and potentially going to your profile. And then from there, they're sitting there and evaluating, okay, he has experience doing this. He has experience doing that. He's showcased some things from his portfolio on his profile. It's just adding to that level and level and level of credibility. But also the more connections that you have, the easier it is for people to find you in those keyword searches as well. So I do think it's extremely important for you to know what your audience is. I think it's always smart to target, you know, people who want to learn from you, but also industry experts. And I think through those two things, recruiters will come. I don't think that you have to specifically create your content for them. I think that they will come because they're constantly on LinkedIn looking for talent. But yeah,
Brett,
go ahead.
Annie here. So I'm sorry that I insist on this, but as an introvert, all of you have said scares me. And
Okay.
so at this point, it is mandatory to have LinkedIn, and all these evaluations it means that the industry and the job search dismisses my professional background and skills because I don't engage with social networks. So what is a best practice? Or like, are you saying, is this mandatory? Is this what I have to do? Or like, how does a company approach someone introverted like me? Am
Yeah.
I instantly dismissed, or what does it mean?
So no, I think with a lot of the things that I'm sharing, it can sometimes come across as mandatory, but I'm the type of person to say, you know, these are the things that you can do to really stand out. So in terms of creating content and engaging on LinkedIn, that's not necessary. I think it can add to it. I think what you really want to focus on is having a very, very high quality keyword searchable profile, and you can still experience a lot of success through that. You know, when we're talking about like content creation, that's kind of next level. But let me when I get a chance, I will find the link. And if Bree, if you can do that, that would be super helpful. On the Udacity YouTube page, if you go to the career webinars playlist there, if you scroll through it, and you guys can do this as well, but there we have a ton of videos for students, but you can take advantage of them as well. It's open to the public. There's one that I facilitated called the LinkedIn Guide to Landing Jobs Without Applying. And it's really focused on putting together a keyword optimized, focused profile. So I would encourage you check that one out, because I do think that you could still experience a lot of success with just making sure that you have a high quality profile. It's just that a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today just goes in alignment with personal branding and becoming a better mentor. And we already have that content available. So this is kind of a new kind of, if you wanted to take it to the next level, but we do have some of those pre-recorded resources that you can take advantage of. Okay, so yeah, some of the things here, the content ideas, some of these content ideas are similar to some of the other things, but ask yourself these questions. These are very easy ways to get started in terms of creating maybe your first LinkedIn post. Maybe this is the first time you've ever done it. However, you have me to guide you through this. So you're starting at a much better place than I did, but just try it. See what happens. You never know. People might see it, they might engage with it. It might encourage you to keep going with it. So Ani, if it does make you nervous, I would say give it one try or two tries and just see how it works. If you're not comfortable with it, you don't ever have to do it again. Oh,
Okay.
thank you, Brianna. Yeah, absolutely. This is not necessary, but I think as the job market continues to shrink, right? Like there are just less opportunities available. You really need to be seen. You need to stand out. You need to be recognized. And I think that, you know, sometimes people are uncomfortable with that attention, which I can totally, you know, get to. The main reason why I did this was to make money, to start personal branding, to building my business. You know, I'm the type of person, I'd rather be rich than famous. Like that makes me worried if I was to get up to that level. because I like my anonymity. I like to remain unknown a little bit, but I know that I have a lot of information that can help people. And so me as an educator, I feel like I have a responsibility to share my knowledge. So it's never really been about becoming well known. It's more so been about, I have all this stuff in my head that I've taken time to learn. Why not share that and give that back to other people who could really benefit from this? But yeah, I definitely understand your worries. I think that this is a good opportunity for introverts, whereas more of the in-person stuff, it can be a little bit more difficult, but I still understand if you have some issues with that. Totally understandable. Michael says, do you have any advice for people who seek remote work outside of the country they are in? Whew, yes, it's tough. It's tough right now. I think remote roles were highly competitive pre-COVID. I think that they're even more competitive now, even though there are more available. I think that you want to try to connect with people at those companies in advance before positions become available. So one mistake that I see a lot of people make is I see a job. I want to work as a machine learning engineer at this company in the UK, and I see a job, and then I'll go to LinkedIn, find somebody who works there, and then reach out and say, hey, love to learn about your experience, or hey, I see that you just posted a job. But to some people on the receiving end, it becomes, this person is only reaching out to me so they can get a job. And when you approach it from a transactional approach, it takes away from the ability to build genuine relationships. And so if you want to find a remote job, I highly suggest that you start by creating a list of companies first that you're interested in, and then build those relationships proactively so that when positions do become available, you can pull on those relationships. And you may think to yourself, well, what if they never post one? Then they don't. But what I'm saying is that's a much more effective process. You're more likely to build genuine relationships. You're more likely to get referrals. And that's why you don't focus on 1, 2, or 3 companies. You might have a list of 10, 15 that you're reaching out and building connections in advance, and then monitoring those companies' job alerts, but then also maintaining and building those relationships so that they know what you're looking for, and may potentially even say, hey, Michael, we're hiring for this role. I think that you'd be perfect for it. Please send me your application so I can forward it to the hiring manager. That seems ideal, but I promise you it happens when you're doing it right. It happened to me very recently. And I think it's more so about when you're looking for people to connect with. I always tell my students, ask yourself, can I see myself having a professional relationship with this person if it never leads to a job at this company? If your answer is no, you can still reach out, but I think ideally you want to say yes, because that helps you go about it a different way. It helps you to find people who have similar interests, which, answers the question in the chat, how do you build those relationships? I think you start by building in with people that you have things in common with. So you can search LinkedIn for Udacity, people who have Udacity in their education section. You can filter by that and see all the people who have completed nano degrees. You can use that as a way to introduce that conversation. You can use that as a way to start talking. How was your experience? I work as a reviewer for this program. I'd love to learn about your experience so I can better my role as a reviewer or as a mentor. What did you think about the projects? Those are things that you can use to start a conversation. And ultimately, I think with, building those relationships, you always want to make sure that it's mutually beneficial. So I usually try to avoid people who I'm just reaching out to because I want something from them. I always am trying to constantly ask myself, how can I provide value to them as well? And I think that, the conversation between me and Bree is a testament to that, right? I was just connecting because I was like, Bree works for Udacity. This would be a great idea, a great opportunity for me to just network internally. And we started to have a conversation, and it was like, how can we help each other? And I think that this is a perfect example of how you do that and how you build those relationships. And so through this process, I would hope that Bree would look out for me, and I would look out for her if I knew what she was looking for, and I could recommend her in the future. That's how you build relationships, because it's not one-sided. And I think that will change your entire approach to networking in general, is trying to focus on building genuine relationships and focusing on how you can make it mutually beneficial. I think it has definitely changed the dynamic for me to where I'm not approaching it from a means to an end. I'm genuinely approaching it from like, I would like to get to know this person and figure out how we can help each other. I think that will help you. So yeah, in terms of content ideas, what else can you guys think of that you think might be helpful, or that you've been thinking, you know, I want to create something around this, but I haven't necessarily known how to go about doing it? What are some things that you all might think could be good content ideas for you? And also please share specifically the content area. So whatever you're coaching or mentoring around.
Yeah, I think for me, creating content around career transition from live events into machine learning or software engineering would probably be right up my alley for like targeting those executives that are trying to fill those positions. Because then it hits both industries. It hits, you know, the tech industry and live event professionals. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you'd be surprised how many people you're able to help, because even if they haven't worked in the live event industry, they may have been a bartender, or they may have made their living around being in person. And so I think that a lot of people will gain clarity from what information that you share. And sometimes people just want to hire people that are helpful. So if they see that you're on here helping people, providing content, and not asking for anything in return, they may be more likely to say we should hire this person because we want people like that to work for us. So yeah, that you'll be surprised as you go through this process who you gain as supporters, who are people that really want to get involved, and who recommend you to other people. There have been several times where I have, you know, booked coaching calls and asked, you know, how did you find out about me? They would say, oh, so and so recommended me. I'm like, I don't even know who that is. So you know, there are a lot of benefits from just being a helpful person. And I think people want to help people who help people. But yeah, any other content ideas?
Yeah, for me, I'm Khaled, and I'm working in self-driving vehicles. But at the same time, people think that this is the only thing that I know. So maybe I can post other things, for example, Python, and how to tips and tricks on using Python. So this would increase an area that is hazy for others to understand how good or how much I know about it.
Yeah. So one thing to just keep in mind with that is that you don't want to kind of make it unclear what your area of expertise is. So I think some of those things are really helpful, but if your focus is like self-driving car and that's what you want to be known for, you don't want to be talking about things that are too far unrelated. I think obviously this is right in alignment, but just something for everybody to think about. That's one of the big challenges that I've had, is that I've been career coaching my entire career, but I'm ready for the next step. Like, I want to lead teams. I want to manage a budget. Like, I'm ready to go. And so it's been a little bit challenging for me to continue to create content around job searching and career development, because I want to focus more on people who are kind of looking to move up, not people who are looking to like land a new role. I want to help people develop leaders. I'm interested in education and tech. And so sometimes my varied interests have helped, but sometimes they've also hurt, because people are like, well, you can't be good at everything. Like where are you focusing on? Unfortunately, we're kind of in a job market where these employers, they want specialists. And especially if you're looking at like those major companies, these are not startups where you're doing all kinds of different things, you're wearing multiple hats. A lot of times it's like, we want you to focus on this one project, we want you to maintain it, and we want you to be good at that, and that's it. And for me, I struggle with that, because I want to do events, I want to do coaching, I want to manage a budget, I want to do all these different things, and sometimes that works in my favor, but it also works against me in some cases. Yeah, let's kind of move on. So this is really important. If you are interested in kind of creating posts, this is outside of articles. I think articles are kind of the next step. That's like a little bit more advanced, but I will say this about articles. Even if people don't read it, it still elevates you as an expert. So if people see that you wrote an article on best practices for predictive business analytics, even if they don't read it, they're like, wow, this lady created an article. She must be smart. She must know what she's talking about. And so that alone can kind of boost your credibility. But then obviously, as you continue to go, as you continue that process, you'll get better. For me, I love being able to write on LinkedIn. I grew up hating writing. I always disliked it. I didn't like the fact that it was always critiqued. I was like, this is my expression. Why are they critiquing what I'm trying to do? And so for me, I write very conversationally. I make grammatical errors. I don't have any editor who's coming in and saying, I think this sentence should be worded a little bit differently. You can write whatever you want, however you want. The grammar can be off. Obviously, you want it to make sense and read easily, but I write very conversationally. So if you read an article from me, it would sound very similar to a webinar or a one-on-one conversation. If you are interested in doing posts or articles and you're not super confident with kind of writing it in English, Grammarly is a really great resource. I use the free version. There are also some other free versions of that will kind of critique your grammar as you write. Or you can copy and paste it into that platform to where it makes a little bit more sense. So I recommend that a lot of times to students who, English is their second language and they're trying to write their resumes, but it applies here as well. You want it to be easily readable, and sometimes if there are too many grammar errors, it can be hard to read or discourage people from continuing. And I see that there are some questions. I want to get through this slide just really quickly. So these are my top tips. So I'll go through each one of them. So when you post on LinkedIn, just kind of a regular post, not an article or anything in depth, usually as it pops up in the timeline, I think before you used to only see the first 3 lines. Now I think you see like the first 5 lines, but that's your chance to get them to continue reading more. So you want to write something that's going to grab their attention. So stories work really well. Shocking statistics work really well. You want to be careful with the clickbait, where you're kind of posting something that's just to get them to read it, and then it's like, well, this isn't even accurate. So things that are shocking sometimes will get people to read it, especially because it's on LinkedIn. So some of the ways that I've kind of jumped in and led conversations is like, stop applying for jobs online. Like that's a big, people are like, whoa, wait a minute, how am I supposed to get a job? And then, you provide the context and give them some reason why. But always grab their attention because it will encourage them to read more. 2, always add value. And I think that, that goes back to that conversation we talked about when we brag and teach. If you finished a nano degree or got your master's degree, that's great, but you could have 1 million likes and not get any follows or any connections or any job opportunities or any freelance customers through that. So you always want to add value because that encourages people to want to connect with you. It makes it so that people want to engage with you a little bit more. And helps you to be in a position to where you can be seen as a helper. And as we mentioned before, that's really impactful. Number 3, I would say, is to tag active users. So this is something you want to be careful of. You don't necessarily want to tag people that you don't know or tag people that you don't frequently engage with. So you don't want to say, here are my top 5 job search tips, and then tag the top career expert in the world. That's not something you want to do. So if there are people that you're interested in engaging with, do that for them first. So if there's someone who's in your field, who's a thought leader, who posts frequently on LinkedIn, make a habit of liking and leaving thoughtful comments on their page. So instead of just going in and liking it and moving on, or liking it and saying, thanks, or this is great, go in, like it, and say, I love that you posted this. I think this would be extremely helpful for beginning software engineers. If I would add anything to it, I would say to make sure you know that you're going to fail and fail and fail until you succeed. And once you get comfortable with that, you'll be able to be a developer or something like that. So you want to add value again, even when you're engaging with other people's. Obviously, it's not always relevant, but as much as you can do that, the better. Because even if you're just engaging with other people's content, you still have an opportunity to showcase your expertise as well as increase the awareness of their post. So once again, where win-win-win, where if I'm posting and people are engaging, they have an opportunity to build their awareness of what they're doing. If they're posting and I'm commenting, I have the opportunity to do the same. But then at the end of the day, the end user, the viewer, are the ones who benefit as well. So I love the platform for that reason. 4, I would say include relevant hashtags when necessary. It's not always necessary, but I would say 1 to 3. Do not go overboard like people do on Instagram. Include 20 different hashtags. It might help in terms of the visibility, but I think it takes away from the quality of the actual content. So only include hashtags that are really relevant to your post. So if you post about self-driving cars, maybe your hashtag is self-driving car, autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, and leave it at that. Don't go overboard and do too much. The next thing is readability is key. So what I mean by that is if you're posting, you have 1,300 characters in LinkedIn. If you're posting there and you're using quite a bit of that, you don't want to put it all in one giant block of text. As somebody scrolling through and seeing that, I'm going to say, whoa, that's too much. I don't want to read it, even if it's the same character amount, right? So break it up into small sections to where it's easily readable. You can include emojis. You can include like dashes or bullets or things that make it, you know, more visually appealing to the eye, and things that, you know, lazy millennials and Gen Z people like me get comfortable with, lists instead of reading paragraphs. That can be a really good way to encourage people to want to continue reading through that. And the funny thing about it is the posts that I create on LinkedIn that do the absolute best are full all the way to the end of the character limit, like purely long form text, 1,300 characters or close to it, which is surprising to me because normally on social media, things like video and pictures and other elements add to the visibility. But for me personally, just the long form text works extremely well because I'm able to provide examples, I'm able to share stories. And so that works really well for me, but may not necessarily work well for you. So you have to take some time to refine that and figure out your situation. Number 6 is so tremendously important so that you're not wasting your time. So as it relates to when you post is extremely important. I see people who will, you know, go and have an event, and John, you might be able to relate to this, but go and have an event, hire a videographer, record the event, pay someone to edit it, and then post it on LinkedIn on a Saturday night. And it's like, no, nobody's on LinkedIn right now. Nobody's on LinkedIn on a Saturday night. You know, I mean, depending on the time zone, but you want to post when people are engaging. And traditionally on LinkedIn, people are on LinkedIn at work. So during traditional business work hours, you know, 9 to 5-ish, for most people. Obviously now people are on the internet a lot more. So weekend, Fridays, nights are a little bit more engaging, but that's the case with any platform. But focus on when people are actually using the platform so that you're not wasting all of this time creating this amazing content and posting it at 10 p.m. where nobody's going to read it and maybe a couple people will in the morning. That's not to say you can't have a successful post at those times, but you're just better off doing it. For me, and you all might have specific times that work really well, but I want you all to guess what's the best time for me to post on LinkedIn. Think about the work that I do and think about what I do every day. I'll give you a hint. It's a specific day of the week and a specific time of day. Not like a 1 p.m. but like morning, afternoon, night on a specific day of the week. So Farida says afternoon. Demetrios says a little bit afternoon. Thursday lunchtime, before lunch. So nobody's gotten it yet. Sunday night, good guess, 6 p.m. So, okay, let's think about the work that I do, right? I help people find jobs that they love. Yes, Elena, yes, Monday morning is the best time for me to post when people are like, I have to get up and go through another week of this nonsense. And then when I'm posting about how to get to your next step, people are already in the emotional space to want to engage, or want to reach out and throw their money at me. Obviously, it doesn't happen that easily, but it's a great time for me to post because that's when people really want to engage with what I'm doing. It may not be as clear for you, but I recommend that you take some tips from the digital marketing reviewers in here and do some A/B testing, or post in the morning, post in the afternoon, post at night, post at lunch, post on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, different tries, and see what works the best for you, because your audience is going to determine how well your content does. So keeping in mind the timing is really important. I wish I had a prize to give you, Elena, but yeah, congratulations for guessing that, I guess. But yeah, keep in mind the timing is extremely important. So I did see that there was a question I want to get to so that I don't miss it. Let's see. Do you have any advice when we are switching roles from a software developer to a data analyst? I think my biggest piece of advice is to position your branding to where it fits data analyst now and not software developer. A lot of people will go the route of saying software developer looking to transition into a data analyst role. You don't want to do that. You want to say that you are a data analyst a data analyst with a background in software development. Obviously, you don't want to call yourself a data analyst if you don't know how to do that work, but you also don't have to have that job title to consider yourself that. So one example that I usually share with people is like for me in my business and most of the stuff that I do, even some work with Udacity, I do my own graphic design. And so if I woke up tomorrow and said, you know what, this career coaching stuff is boring. None of the people on the webinar ever talk. I want to be a graphic designer. I could do that because I have that skill set. I know how to shift my branding to match that. But you have to be confident in that skill set. It's not necessarily that you have to be hired for that role before you can start calling yourself that. I think that there's a lot of power in kind of getting rid of that imposter syndrome and telling yourself, you know, I am this. This is what I can do. This is what I'm good at. And you're not going to get people to believe in you, and you're not going to get people to be confident in hiring you if you're not confident in yourself. So you want to position yourself as a data analyst with the background in software development. So doing that on LinkedIn, on your profile as it relates to your resume, focusing on what elements of your previous jobs as a software developer qualify you to be a data analyst. So you're not just regurgitating job descriptions and saying, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. You want to showcase how what you've done is related to what you want to do. I'll give you another example. So in one of my previous positions, I oversaw a college dorm building. And when I was trying to make a transition into career coaching, I didn't focus on things like facilities and maintenance issues. I didn't talk about crisis response. I didn't talk about roommate conflicts. I chose to write my resume in a way that focused on the one-on-one supervision, the hosting educational programs, and being involved in the professional and student staff hiring process. All of those things were still within my role and my responsibilities. They may not have been the main things that I was doing, but that does a better job of showcasing how I'm qualified to be a career coach. Whereas the facilities issues, the crisis response, I would never do that in a career coaching role. So it makes no sense to showcase that on my resume because it's not appealing to their needs. You always have to consider the company's needs the same way as a business owner. You need to consider your customers' needs when you're putting out your marketing materials, which for you all in the job search include your LinkedIn profile and your application materials. Let's see. How many articles, activity do you post daily or weekly? Where do you find content? How do you protect the content you create? Amazing questions. So for me, I used to post 3 times a week when I was really trying to boost my credibility. Now is a perfect time. I just don't have the time to do it. It's just really tough for me to find time to sit down and either create or repurpose the content that I have. But at one point I was doing it 3 times a week, getting a lot of really good engagement, building my profile up. Now is a great time because people are stuck to their phones and always consuming social media. There is no right way to do it. I would say for you, you have to think about what's realistic for you to be able to do quality and consistency. So if you say, I'm going to create 1 post a week, I think that that's an amazing place to start. I think that's very realistic for anybody in this group, you know, myself included. It doesn't matter how busy you are. I think you could create 1 post. Obviously, I don't know everybody's situation, but that's a good goal, at least in getting started. Say, I'm gonna create 1 post a week, at least to see how this works, to see if this is something that I want to continue doing. How do I protect the content I create? I'm still figuring it out. I a lot of times just put out stuff for free and keep the more what I would consider like gold content for paid opportunities. So even with Udacity, like I give some of the greatest content that I have, but I'm not going to share my best stuff with this specific platform unless I'm getting paid extra to do so, because I do similar work with my business. So as it relates to LinkedIn, the same thing goes. I'm not going to post an online course for free if I put several, hours into that as a way to create income for myself. So I think you have to figure out what content makes sense for free, for lead generation, for helping your audience, and what makes sense to save for, my one-on-one clients, the people who are paying me to do that, the people who come to me for paid content, so that they say, well, why would I go and pay you to do this if I can get it through Udacity's YouTube page or through your LinkedIn articles? I want to pay you for the exclusive stuff. So you have to have a little bit of both, I think, one for the awareness and the marketing, and then one to provide that level of quality and exclusivity to your potential audience. But I think if you're just job seeking, I don't worry too much about protecting content, because at the end of the day, all content is stolen, in my opinion. I think, this webinar, obviously I came up with it out of my head, but all of these things I learned through other LinkedIn users, through my own experience, through books that I've read, through classes that I've taken. So at the end of the day, I don't think content belongs to anyone for the most part. I think, depending on how much work and effort you put into it, that does become your own. But for me, I don't like to monopolize my knowledge. I think that that's unethical, especially in the work that I do. One of my fears is that if I keep writing content and get little to no feedback, then I don't know what's wrong. That's a very realistic possibility and could happen. But at the same time, there's the same chance that it could go really well. So that would be my only piece of advice, is it could go wrong. But at the end of the day, you don't lose anything, not even time. Because if you have content, as we talked about before, you can very easily repurpose that for other things. You said it's better to focus on a very specific field so that recruiters know what is your exact area of expertise. Does this hold for business? I think so. If my goal is to get customers to find me, is it bad to be more general? I think so. I've experienced that personally, where I've tried to expand from just doing resume writing to then doing career coaching, to then do public speaking, and then to do webinars and workshops. It has become a little cloudy, I think, for certain people who are viewing my profile, and they're like, well, what are you good at? And I'm like, I can do all of these things. But for the average person, they may not believe that from your profile. And so I personally believe that it is better to focus. So for me, I've thought about, like, potentially creating a different business just for the public speaking versus the coaching. Right now, it's just hard for me to do that as one person, but I do think that it helps you to have more of a niche and a focus area. How much do you need to champion topic or research in order to write about it? For example, I'd love the importance of data analytics for the development of COVID, but I'm not a biotech expert. So I think, focus on what you know. Don't try to create content around things that you're not an expert, because even if you're successful at writing it, will you be successful at answering questions about it is kind of my test. Can I answer questions related to this, or find a biotech expert and collaborate on a project? That's kind of what me and Bree are doing with this. I wouldn't have been able to put this together without her knowledge of what you all are looking for and what your experience is as mentors and reviewers. So just collaborate, because then you have more potential exposure to the content that you're creating. I've written 10 articles on Medium and have 2 million views. Do you recommend me go ahead with a personal website or continue with Medium? I think you can do it everywhere. My articles are on my website. They're on my Medium. They're on my LinkedIn. It doesn't take away having them in different locations, I don't think. I think it makes sense for you to keep it on Medium. If you have a personal website, do that. Share on that website that this specific article has gotten 600,000 views. That will encourage people to want to read it more. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, you'll see with my cover letter article, I added that in the design. It says 50,000 views. That's going to encourage people to want to read it. Okay, let's move on. So this is just something that I wanted to throw out there. I wanted to mention so that you all have awareness. I know this might not be the most popular part of the presentation, but one of the things that I wanted you all to think about is that we are currently in a very, very tight job market. Sometimes when you are pursuing a career, even if it is a mentor or reviewer, and this is your only position, and you want to do something more related to what you want to do, I just want you to take a second, open your mind, and consider some other career opportunities that are still in alignment with what you want to do. So a common conversation that I've been having with a lot of people lately who are in similar positions to you all, and even a student who I had yesterday who is teaching an intro to programming course at a local community college but wants to be a developer. Open your mind to getting involved with education technology. If you like what Udacity stands for, if you like working for Udacity, if you enjoy the experience of helping other people learn, don't rule that out as an opportunity to learn. There are plenty of opportunities that are coming up and are already out there where companies like Udacity, companies like Udemy, companies like Coursera, companies, you know, colleges and universities are looking for experts who want to teach. The problem is a lot of these companies are looking to hire software engineering instructors, technical curriculum developers, and nobody wants to do that. They want to do the actual job. So a lot of people are asking themselves, why would I take a $60,000 US dollar job to teach when I could get an $80,000 job doing? Well, if you're not able to find a job right now because it's such a tight job market, that's probably a better opportunity than working part-time and trying to kind of navigate that, depending on your situation, obviously. So I would just consider opening your mind to additional opportunities within ed tech, because my background is in K through 12 and higher education. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to get out of the traditional system is because I saw the very, very cool things that companies like Udacity was doing. I personally believe that Udacity would be a household name someday. I think that education technology is going to revolutionize the entire education industry. I think people will forego university degrees for programs like this down the road unless colleges and universities get their act together. And so for me, I see a ton of opportunity within this budding industry, especially with COVID. And all of these schools are like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this online? This is an opportunity. So it may not be ideal, but a lot of us aren't able to live in our ideal situation right now. We have to look at the reality of what's going on in the world. And we can't say, you know, I want to be a software engineer at Google and that's all I'm going to settle for. I think that that's being very unrealistic in terms of thinking about the level of competition that you're going to face, as well as the amount of opportunities that are open and available. So that's not to at all discourage you from pursuing that type of career. I just want you to consider other options, because if you feel like you like this but want more of the stability of a full-time role, consider education as a route to kind of get there, because it could serve as a good kind of placeholder for you, the same way that this role might be, until the job market recovers or until companies start hiring more developers and you have that experience that has supplemented your ability to get that. So just wanted to make a point to keep an open mind and explore some of those opportunities. The person I spoke with yesterday didn't even know that those opportunities were available. So just something to take a look at: curriculum developers, technical curriculum developers, technical writers, course instructors. A lot of these programs are not like Udacity where it's self-directed. Some of them are actual like teaching, very similar to this on a consistent basis. So just keep an open mind. So yeah, for those of you who are still on the call, I really appreciate you listening to me for this long. I want you all to take some time. Bree, if you haven't already, please post that graphic within the Student Hub channel that you all share. But I want you to utilize that space to drop your link. Please don't just create a thread. I can talk to you from experience. I hate when students go in and just say, here's my LinkedIn, connect with me. And then you have like 12 in a row, and the content that we're trying to get out to students gets flooded away with LinkedIn messages. So find that graphic and just reply to it and drop your LinkedIn URL there. And this is a great opportunity for all of you to connect with each other on LinkedIn, because this is such a valuable resource. What you could be doing and utilizing that channel for, or separate channels, is to support each other's content. So, you know, throughout kind of the growth of social media, a lot of people will create these things called pods. So either on like Instagram or LinkedIn, and it's kind of a group of people who get together and say, whenever I post content, can you support it? And so you have a whole group, like 10 people. We all post content on LinkedIn. Every time we post it, we make a note in the group. And then so everybody can flood that content with likes and comments to boost the engagement and boost the awareness. I would also double check with the team to make sure that that's okay to utilize that space. If not, you can always create your own like private chat through like GroupMe or WhatsApp or something like that, to just support each other. Because if you're worried about people not seeing it, this is a way for you to help each other. But I would say don't sign up to do that if you only plan to get help for yourself. You want to make an active effort of going, liking, leaving comments. And if you're not able to do that, don't expect other people to do it for you. But it is kind of a quick hack as a way to get really quick engagement from your posts. So I would encourage that you utilize each other, and learn who are the other reviewers in similar areas. You may not be tagging the digital marketer reviewers for your self-driving car content. You might if they're interested in that, but you want those people to have an opportunity to engage with you and boost your awareness and showcase their expertise as well. I think, you know, I mentioned a lot about competition, but I think one of the best ways to compete is to collaborate with people who are at your level so that you can boost each other up as you go. I think that there's so much value in being able to do that for each other. And, you know, having Udacity as a place to bring all of you together is really beneficial, to where I think you'll start to get more engaged with that community, as well as just see some more benefits from that process. And then you'll also be able to kind of, you know, increase your awareness at the same time. So there's a benefit there. So for those of you who are interested, I would absolutely love everybody to take a crack at this. This is going to be some people's first time. Ani, if you're not comfortable, don't do it, but I want to push you to try, just to see what happens. But ideally, what I'm hoping for is that you all are able to create a post that, you know, tag me. So you'll have to connect with me first, connect with Bree, and tag us in it, you know, tag us towards the end. And I want you all to just try, and you might be surprised at what happens. Even if it's fake or it's just us supporting you, I think that it's a great place to start so that you're getting the hang of doing it right. But yeah, think about all these things: grabbing attention, adding value, tagging users, using hashtags, readability, and timing. And not to toot my own horn, but I'm going to toot it just a little bit. I have over 11,000 followers. A lot of them are in the IT space. And so just getting people like me and Bree to comment boosts that engagement, right? As we looked at the timeline, people might not be connected to you, but they might be connected to me. So if you create a post about machine learning and I like it or leave a comment, that exposes my network potentially to who you are, and they may want to connect with you from that. I know it's kind of a little bit difficult to follow that process, but hopefully it makes a little bit more sense than it did before this session. But yes, I will make sure to comment on it. Yeah, absolutely. If you don't feel comfortable, I totally get it. No pressure at all. But if you want to,
I will try. Yes.
Okay. Good. Good.
Yes.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
I appreciate you putting forth the effort. So yes, we did it in an hour and a half exactly. Thank you all so much for listening to me for that long. I have no problem doing it. I could do it all day. But yeah, I want to set some time aside for you all to ask any questions that you might have. And this is a great time for you to ask more personal questions, and not like your personal life, but like things that relate specifically to your situation. I like to try to keep the comments relevant throughout the presentation, but I'm in no rush to hop off the call. So if you do have any questions that you're wondering about, please feel free to do that. I would also encourage you to check out that resource on Udacity's YouTube page of all of the events. I will say this: the career coaching team with Udacity is the best team I've worked with as it relates to career development and just the level of expertise. I think Udacity has done an amazing job of collecting experts in that area. So we've got like a list of like 55 plus events similar to this, but not necessarily targeted for mentors, but targeted for job seekers that I think you'll find really valuable. And I've done a lot of those events myself. If you just like the content that I've shared, it can be very similar. But yeah, any questions, feel free to jump on your mic. Feel free to put it in the chat. I'm here to help.
Brad, hi.
Hello.
Hi. Apart from like the usual like LinkedIn and Medium, do you post on any other channels that you find valuable to you, for example?
Good question. So I think it may look different for you. And I usually tell that to everybody. Like for people who are artists, LinkedIn is not the best place. Instagram is better for that. So I have done some Instagram in the past just because I have a different following there. I have a lot of friends from high school and college and people who know me more from my personal life, and just, you know, knowing me as a person and not necessarily my work. So sometimes I will post content on Instagram. I've been taking kind of a huge social media break lately. So I haven't posted on there very frequently, but I do have some success through Instagram. But I've had to be very aware of that content. Obviously on LinkedIn, long form text works really well for me. Medium is long form text, but on Instagram, I can't post, you know, a screenshot of a resume and say, hire me. I have to do more video. I have to do more images, more graphics, and things like that. So you want to be aware of like where your audience is and engaged and what makes the most sense for your area of expertise. So for me personally, I would say most of my content is either on LinkedIn, Medium, or Instagram, or live, like events like this. I love to do webinars, and so I do them frequently with my business. And I get a lot of engagement through the live session. So even if it's not social media, I think public speaking can be a really great opportunity for that as well.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for the whole webinar, by the way.
Oh.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you got some value from it. Let's see, Carlos, what is the tag for? Oh, so you have to connect with us on LinkedIn first. So, I mean, you could just type in my name and search Udacity. It should pop up, hopefully. And Bree, maybe you can drop yours in there. Let's see, what else? Have you thought about starting your own consultancy company and going fully independent? I mean, your own one-man company. So I am doing that. I started off as a freelance resume writer, and as I grew, I've never touched that money for personal use. I always pour it back into the business, as well as taking on additional certifications. I transitioned from freelance resume writer. Once I realized that resume was less important than networking and LinkedIn, I started focusing on coaching. After doing some coaching, I've done a little bit of consulting for college, university career centers, as well as doing webinar series for their students, and just doing some public speaking as well. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Obviously with the pandemic, things have slowed down a little bit for me, but yeah, I've been doing it. It's been fun. It's been a wild ride. But yeah, if anybody's interested in that, I think it can be a great experience for you all as well. But yeah, any last questions, or anybody want to jump on their mic?
I got a question, please.
Okay, sure.
The target is to engage the contacts or some kind of headhunters that may follow the post that are out, so inside the network or outside the network.
So I want to make sure I understand your question. So you're asking, like, is the target to connect with people in your network or outside of your network?
Yes, it's the target of the post. So do you, I post something, I want to be seen from people of my network, or somebody else that is outside of the network, some kind of headhunters of some other people?
Yeah, great question. So I think it's a little bit of both, right? You want to create content in general, and I don't think you have to target it specifically to fit that, because you will get new followers or new connections based on the content that you're creating. So one is you want to build an audience by sharing content, but you also want to cater to the audience that you already have. So in terms of putting out content, I don't think that it changes too much, because if you're creating quality content, it should be relevant to both your already connected people and people who are finding it by, you know, other people's engagement. So you win both of those areas by creating content in general. I hope that answers your question. Let's see, question, what is the best way to target the audience outside your country? So I think you have to start by building connections within that location. It's going to be really difficult for you to start targeting those people if all of your connections are in the same location. So for me, I never really attracted people in like India and like Nigeria were two places that I never really had people. But once I started to get more professionals in those locations, I started to get more connections from people in those locations. So I would say you have to start by, you know, either connecting with them first or potentially creating content that's relevant for them. So one of the things that I'm constantly thinking about when I'm putting together content for Udacity is that I'm not just speaking to a US audience. I'm not just speaking to a local audience. I'm speaking to a global audience. And so I have to try my best to use what I do know and to make it applicable for people in a wide variety of industries as well as globally. So if I was trying to target people in the UK, one of the things that I might do is, you know, there are some slight differences in language between the US English and, you know, British English. And then also, you know, there may be certain hiring standards that are very different. In some countries, having your picture on your resume is either required or recommended. And in the US, that's kind of like a no-go, don't do that, or you don't need it. So I would have to be familiar with the customs and the culture and different things like that so that I could, you know, make sure that I'm creating content that fits that. So I would say it's going to take some time to educate yourself and do some research. Sometimes LinkedIn makes me feel low. I see people's success and it really makes me feel unworthy. What can I do about that? I feel really uncomfortable. That is very common. So that idea, you know, is called social comparison, and people do it on all different platforms and all different forms. I've myself kind of caught myself doing that, especially on platforms like LinkedIn, where I'm scrolling through and I'm like, why don't I look like that when I go to the gym? Or, you know, like this isn't working for me. And so that's the same thing with platforms like LinkedIn. You know, I don't think it's beneficial for you to compare yourself to other people unless that's a motivator for you. If you're finding that you're getting more stress from it than motivation, take a break or reevaluate how you look at that platform. I think that that's not going to do a lot for you in terms of benefiting you, because then it starts to cloud your judgment and what making decisions that are right for you. So when you start to see what other people are doing, you start to think that's what I should be doing. And your situation, your life, your really your unique situation is not the same as theirs. So they may, you know, you may have a family, they may be single, and they may be looking at your life and saying, well, I wish I had a family like they do. The same way you're saying, I wish I have a job like they do. You don't see the behind the scenes. You don't see what goes into that. You don't see that they're working 70 hours a week to have that job that you want, where you really are enjoying kind of having the comfort of your family and different things like that. So don't do that. It's going to make it harder for you to decide what you really want, because basically you're deciding what you want based on what other people have. And that process needs to start internally. Yes, imposter syndrome is serious. So yeah, I don't usually make recommendations for therapy, but I've done it myself. You know, I'm not ashamed to say so. I've gotten a lot of value from speaking to a therapist, speaking to other career coaches. I think that there's a huge stigma around mental health, and I don't know why. I love going to the therapist every single time I go. I'm excited. I don't always leave in the best mood, but I always find it valuable and helpful for me to do so. So yeah, I definitely think that's something that you can work through, and something that, you know, starts from within, not from externally. But yeah, great recommendation. So yeah, I do want to wrap up. Thank you all so much for participating. Thank you all for engaging, and thank you all for the great questions and sharing some of your insights as well. Thank you, Bree, for helping facilitate this. I had a great time working with you all. I enjoy doing this. Bree, is there anything that you wanted to say or close out with?
No, I think you did an amazing job. Thank you everyone for showing up. I'll still be in Student Hub doing office hours later today, and I'll be following up with you guys on your questions and stuff. So thank you for showing up, and thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, I guess with that, we will close out. Once again, thank you all for attending. I wish you all the best of luck, whether it's your job search or any personal branding things. If you have any specific questions or want additional content, check out that career webinars playlist. We have a ton of great stuff on there from all of the coaching team, you know, great experts and a lot of knowledge on there that isn't always used to its fullest extent. So check that out. Once again, thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, night, wherever that looks like for you. But bye.